Struggling nurse donates blood to an emergency patient, only to learn he's a CEO single dad who comes back with a life-changing proposal. It was a stormy evening at the city hospital. The emergency room was busier than ever, sirens outside, nurses rushing in and out, and the smell of antiseptics in the air. Among them was Aisha, a young nurse in her late 20s. She was exhausted after her double shift, but her heart never allowed her to walk away when people needed her. She was a nurse not just by profession, but by purpose. That night, an ambulance screeched to a halt outside. Paramedics rushed in with a man on a stretcher, unconscious, pale, and bleeding. His blood pressure was dropping, and he urgently needed a transfusion. The doctors discovered a complication: his blood type was extremely rare. AB negative, the doctor muttered, his face tense. We don't have enough in the blood bank. Silence filled the emergency room. Everyone knew the odds of finding a donor at midnight were close to impossible. Just as hope began to fade, Aisha took a deep breath and stepped forward. Check mine, she said quietly. Within minutes, the test confirmed it. Aisha's blood was a perfect match. She rolled up her sleeve without hesitation, even though she was already weak from working endless hours. If it can save him, she whispered, do it. As her blood flowed into the man's body, Aisha closed her eyes. She didn't care who he was. To her, every patient was a life worth saving. She had no idea that this man was no ordinary patient. Hours later, the man survived. The operation was successful. The hospital buzzed with relief. Aisha, however, didn't wait for thanks. She quietly left the room and returned to her duties. She was used to giving everything, her time, her energy, even her blood, without expecting anything in return. But life had a twist waiting. The man she saved was Daniel Shah, a powerful CEO known for running one of the country's largest companies. But beyond his wealth and power, he carried a secret pain. He was a single father, raising a little boy after his wife's tragic passing. His son, Adam, was his entire world. When Daniel woke up and learned from the doctors that a nurse had donated her own blood to save him, he was speechless. What's her name? He asked. Aisha, they told him. For days, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about her. A stranger had given him the most precious gift, his life, without even knowing who he was. 1 week later, Daniel returned to the hospital, this time on his own 2 feet. He searched until he found her in a quiet corridor, bent over paperwork, her eyes heavy with fatigue but her smile gentle as she comforted a worried patient's family. Miss Aisha, he said softly. She looked up, startled. Yes? He extended his hand. I'm Daniel. You saved my life. She shook her head humbly. I didn't save you. Medicine did. I only helped. But Daniel saw through her modesty. He noticed the faint scars of struggle etched in her tired face, the way her uniform was neatly pressed despite the exhaustion she carried. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel kept visiting the hospital, sometimes for follow-ups, sometimes just to see her. Slowly, they talked. Aisha shared her story. She had lost her parents young, struggled through nursing school, and was now caring for her younger brother while barely making ends meet. She often skipped meals just to pay rent. Yet, through it all, she never stopped serving others. Daniel was moved beyond words. Here was a woman who had nothing, yet gave everything. One evening, he invited her for coffee outside the hospital. At first, she refused. She didn't want any misunderstandings. But Daniel insisted, his voice sincere. This isn't about gratitude. It's about respect. I want to know the woman who gave me my second chance. Over coffee, he finally opened up too. He told her about his wife's passing, about raising Adam alone, about the nights he would sit by his son's bed wondering how to be both father and mother. Behind the CEO title, there was just a man, broken, lonely, searching for strength. And in Aisha, he saw that strength. Weeks later, Daniel introduced her to his little boy. Adam, wide-eyed and innocent, ran to Aisha the first time they met. "Are you the nurse who saved my daddy?" he asked. She smiled, kneeling down. "I only shared a little bit of myself, sweetheart." Adam hugged her tightly, as if he had known her forever. Daniel watched silently, his heart swelling. Time passed, and the bond deepened. Daniel visited often, sometimes just to bring her lunch during her shift, sometimes to listen when she felt overwhelmed. Aisha, in turn, became a source of comfort for Adam, who began calling her his guardian angel. Yet, Aisha hesitated in her heart. She didn't want to be seen as someone who accepted favors from a wealthy CEO. She was proud, independent, and feared that her struggles would make her seem small in his world. But Daniel never saw her struggles as weakness. He saw them as proof of her courage. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Daniel appeared at the hospital again. But this time, he wasn't just carrying gratitude. He had made a decision that would change both their lives. Standing in the hospital garden, he looked at her with eyes full of sincerity. "Aisha," he said, his voice steady but emotional, "when you gave me your blood, you didn't just save my life. You gave me the chance to be a father to my son again. You reminded me of what selflessness means. You've given without asking for anything, but today, I want to give you something." She looked at him, confused. He took a deep breath. "I don't just want to thank you. I want to walk through life with you. Not as a patient and nurse, not as CEO and stranger, but as a family. Will you consider being part of my life, part of Adam's life?" Tears filled Aisha's eyes. She never imagined that her small act of sacrifice would lead her here, to love, to family, to the possibility of a future filled with meaning. She thought of all her struggles, all the nights she cried in silence, all the times she doubted her worth. And now, here was a man, not just any man, but one whose heart truly saw hers. She whispered softly, "Yes." The hospital staff cheered when the news spread. The story of the nurse who saved a CEO's life, and found love in return, became an inspiration for everyone. But for Aisha and Daniel, it was never about status, or wealth, or titles. It was about kindness meeting gratitude, sacrifice meeting love, and two broken souls finding healing in each other. In the end, Aisha's simple act of humanity had rewritten her destiny. She had saved a life, and in return, she was given a family. And as little Adam once said, hugging her tightly, "Daddy got his life back, and I got my angel forever." Sparkle's moral message. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change the course of not just one life, but many. True love and family are not built on wealth or power, they are built on compassion, sacrifice, and the courage to give selflessly.